What's up YouTube? Today I'm doing a quick cosplay video on how I make some Hellboy horns, and they're meant to be latex or spirit gummed or something to your actual forehead, but I make a Perlman one, and I make one that is more like the new David Harbour Hellboy in the new film that is coming out. And they're both off the same pattern, which is up on Facebook for free, so there's a link in the description to go and check that out, and also some links to products to build this if you don't happen to have any of these materials on hand and you want to go ahead and venture out into the world of cosplay as Hellboy. And let's just go ahead and jump right into the video. Okay, so the two main things that you're going to need is some thick EVA foam. I have some 5/8 inch thick EVA foam here, and I just cut a section off where I'm going to trace the two center circle patterns on. They will go on the thicker foam. And I have 5mm EVA foam, which I'm going to use for the side pieces. Now, if you use something thinner or thicker than 5 for the side pieces, your pattern may not fit. You may have to shrink it or enlarge it if your foam is not the same thickness, because the thickness affects how it's going to wrap around that circle. So you may have an overlap or you may be a little short. So keep that in mind if you decide to change the foam size on the side piece. But the foam for this, if you have 8mm or 10mm, just something thicker than 5, or if you want to double up 5, because if you're going to do it like I am in this video, you're going to be putting some deep impressions and grooves and cuts. And for this, I am making two horns, but one I'm going to make more like Perlman, and one I'm going to make more like the new David Harbour Hellboy. So that way you have an example of each. But they're both going to be made off the same exact pattern. So if you're cutting out your circular pieces, you may notice that it's really hard to cut a nice straight edge on your circles. And in fact, I had to cut several because it just kept coming out from bad to worse. Look how angled that is. And the thing is, I have a razor sharp pair of scissors that I sharpen regularly, and I also have an X-Acto knife with a curved blade that actually does assist a decent amount with cutting circles. But what I ultimately went with was the scissors. And I'm not even going to lie here, I cut it a little bit bigger. And you'll notice the black there from the trace edge, and I've just been sanding them down on a sanding block to help round them out, so I have a nice flush surface to glue to. I mean, if you're just a master with scissors and X-Acto knife, maybe you'll be able to get this as straight and even as I did without sanding it, but I had to sand it, and I'm not ashamed to admit that, and I'm going to pass that tip on to you if you were having difficulty as well. Okay, so I've cut out my horn side pieces, and you'll notice that the top edge and the side edges are cut flat, but if you look at the bottom edge here, you'll notice that it has an angle to it. That is because when I used my X-Acto knife to cut it, I held it at an angle, cutting underneath. That way, whenever it's curled around with this angle on the inside, it will fit a little bit more flushly against my head. Alright, now that I have all my pieces cut out here, I'm going to use some DAP Weldwood contact cement. And how this works is I simply take the brush, remove the excess here, and then apply it to the surfaces to be bonded. Okay, now you see that I have applied it to both surfaces here where I want it to stick, both on the edges and on the tops. Now I'm going to let this rest for 15 to 20 minutes until this is dried out and cured, and then you simply stick the parts together. However, once you attach one piece to the other, it's pretty much stuck. There's no room for adjustment or movement, so you have to have it lined up and pretty much on point the first time. Okay, it's been 15 minutes since I applied my contact cement, and the sides of these are now pretty much not sticky or wet. I'm going to go ahead and glue them together. Okay, so the first thing I've done for the Ron Perlman one is sand it. I'm not going to bother to sand the David Harbour one because I'm going to mangle this with some different things. But mostly because, the Perlman one has the, angled marks from his grinder as he's grinding it down. And I achieved that to an extent already by just sanding it on a rough grit sanding block. But I want to bring that out a little bit more by using my X-Acto knife and cutting some random slashes going the length of it this way. Now that my cuts are done, I'm going to use my Drill Master heat gun to go ahead and heat this up, which will cause the various cuts that I put in it to expand. There you can see now that the cuts and things that I put in it, some of them, the lighter ones, have faded a little bit, but the deeper ones have opened up, giving it kind of a layered look. Next, I'm going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to draw some cracks and some pits. And other marks like that. Okay, now that I have all my marks in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a wood burner to actually cut these and burn them into the foam. Now, if you've never used a wood burner, try to understand that wood burners, obviously by the name, the tips get very, very hot. So if you're under 18, always get a parent's permission and supervision before purchasing or using something like this. And what I'm going to do here is just begin to burn and gouge all this out. It's a lot faster, I think, and quicker and easier, and produces more of a random realistic look and effect than, say, trying to cut all this in just using an X-Acto knife. You also want to be careful as well that you do not burn yourself, but also that you don't catch the foam on fire, because that's a pretty realistic thing that could happen as well. You can see the foam smoking because I am literally melting this into it. Put a couple other little random dots. Okay, and for the David Harbour Hellboy, the newest one coming out, I started by just putting a dot right in the middle, and I heated up my soldering iron. I suggest you use an unused soldering iron since some solder does have lead. You have to use lead-free solder to not have lead. But I just got that hot just so I could burn a small hole right in the middle. Since the tip of my wood burner is not round like the soldering iron is, it's kind of problematic to try and do that. And you'll notice from there it just kind of goes out into these weird lines that kind of lead up to something that looks, to me at least, like a cat butthole. I don't know how else to describe it. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. So, yeah. So now that both of these have been mangled and burned, essentially, I have my David Harbour version, and I have my Ron Perlman. Next thing to do is to seal these and paint them. So to seal them, you could use Plastidip, but you're going to have to wait for it to dry. I want to get this video done quickly, so I am going to seal them with a mixture of Mod Podge and black acrylic craft paint. And what that is going to do is it's going to seal it and give me a black primer to work with as well. Okay, so I have done the black here. You can see the spots where it's glistening in the light here. Still not quite dry, but what I did was I used a paintbrush and I used a disposable plastic spoon, and I mixed together my Mod Podge and black paint, and then I tested it on the foil and on some foam first, just to see how it was going to look, because sometimes too much Mod Podge it won't be black enough, too much paint, and it won't seal your foam well enough. But I'm pretty happy with how this looks so far. Okay, so I ended up applying a second layer of the Mod Podge and black paint mixture, and now I have them secured to a scrap piece of EVA foam mat with a couple of push pins that are then holding them in place so they don't blow all over the place while I'm trying to airbrush them. I'm going to use a wrench to hold them in place, and what I'm going to be using is transparent bright red. Now, you don't have to use an airbrush if you don't have one. You can just dry brush it, which is what my fiance did with hers for her costume. Now that I'm done painting them both, I'm going to go through and use a little bit of Mod Podge sealant just to seal them in. Okay, so these are finished. I think I would actually go through and brighten up the Perlman one a little bit. It's still a bit dark, but I think for the new version, this is pretty good. Now, as far as attaching these goes, that is, of course, entirely up to you. Now, what we did for my fiance's was we latexed them to her head. Literally applied some to her skin and some to this piece, and then using this Dr. Fate shell that I have lying around as an example, we just latexed it to her head, held it in place till it dried once we had it positioned, and then we just used a brush and started building latex up over it. And another idea too, if you would want to use something that is not, say, latex, because you have an allergy to latex, you can always try spirit gum, although you may have a reaction to that as well. So if you have skin issues, make sure you research that thoroughly before you start trying to attach things to your face. She had no reactions or issues any of the times that she has used either the spirit liquid latex or spirit gum. And another option, if you want, say, like mounded flesh around it, you could also use liquid latex and toilet paper and build it up on your face as you go and then make up over it. Or you could build little prosthetic pieces separate and latex them or spirit gum them to your face. Either one, up to you. But yeah, I'm not going to go into any of that on camera because this is supposed to be a quick video. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and hope this gave you some ideas for your own cosplays. And like I say, feel free to check out the links in the description, which will point you towards products, both to make this and to the patterns for this, which are up on Facebook for free as a JPEG image. You can just download it, print it out. However, my head is about a little bit over 22, not quite 23 inches. So the thing is, if you have a larger head or a smaller head, you may need to enlarge the patterns or shrink them. So keep that in mind. Maybe build one out of cardstock first just to see, how big it's going to be on your head. But yeah, as always, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more like it, please feel free to subscribe and like the video, as it does help out the channel. And as always, thanks for watching.